Hey peeps, this is Fernie, your resident psychic medium and spiritual teacher, and you're listening to Fernie Unfiltered, where we dive into topics that enlighten, inform, and entertain the soul. On today's episode, we are talking to Mike Iamele, and we are going to be discovering your authentic self and unique genius. So stick around because you won't want to miss it. Mike Iamele is a respected, published author, blogger, and is the genius behind the Sacred Branding e-course, which can be found on his website, mikeiamele.com. He is also an established wellness coach and clinical herbalist who specializes in helping people define and create success on their own terms. After recovering from a debilitating illness, Mike gave up his high-powered PR career to find his own version of love, success, and happiness. He's also dedicated his life to assisting people in finding their own unique genius and building a business using their special gifts and skills. I'm so happy to have him as my special guest and welcome him to this episode of Fernie Unfiltered. So the first time I heard about you, or I found out about you, was by reading your viral article about what was it called? I'm an otherwise straight man who fell in love with his best friend, and I saw that article and I read it and I was like, well, that isn't that just interesting? Because I think I see it as a way of you finding, like, starting the process of really finding who you were, or finding out who you were. And a lot of people, when they think of like sexuality or they think of sexual preference or whatnot, they want to make it about sex, and it's not about sex. It's more about an opportunity to have an experience that allows you to be yourself in an authentic way. So for me, whenever I realized that I was a gay man, it was in high school, and I had been masquerading as this like straight person for years and years. And then one day a friend of mine just got blunt with me and said, Fernie, you're gay. Get over it. Like, move on, like, next. And after she had that conversation with me, I remember going home, sitting down, laying down on the couch, staring at the ceiling for hours and hours and hours and hours, pondering the significance of what that reality would be for me, and if I owned that, how that was going to affect the rest of my life. Granted, it was the best decision I ever made for myself, because it was the first step in me moving in the direction of being more authentic and being more myself. And I kind of see your story in a very similar way, where, it was one step in that direction, but then over time, this opened the door to a bunch of other opportunities for you to explore yourself and to figure out who you really were. So can you tell me a little bit about that part of your life experience and how that kind of began?
Sure. Well, I'll back it up about maybe a year, even 2 years before the article was written. I, at the time, got really, really sick. And so I was working in public relations. I actually owned my own PR agency at the time. I specialized in healthcare reform. And I woke up one day, I remember the exact date, June 29th, 2012, and I was vomiting blood. And so that wasn't a good thing.
Yeah.
And that continued on for about 2 months. And so I was shopped around from doctor to doctor, trying to figure out what is wrong with me, why am I so sick? And at the time, I was living with Garrett, who is my now husband, but at the time a friend. And he was in residency for pharmacy school. So he was a healthcare professional. And he was kind of taking care of me at this time. Our other roommate, she had a boyfriend, and so she was not sleeping there a lot. So it was really just the two of us. And I wasn't able to do a lot by myself because I was so sick. And so during this process of kind of Garrett taking care of me, it was the first time that I felt like, wait a minute, something is different here. Something feels weird and different. And I feel like I'm getting feelings for him, but this doesn't make any sense to me. Because I've never previously been attracted to a man before. I've known him for years, and I've never been attracted to him. Like, what is happening in this dynamic? And it was very confusing at a time where everything about my life was changing. I mean, I was starting to question my job while I was healing myself and learning about nutrition and interested in helping others around me who were sick. I was questioning, my health practices. I used to drink quite a bit of alcohol, and all of a sudden I had no interest in alcohol anymore. Of course, I was really sick, but even when I started to get better, I wasn't interested in alcohol. And so things in my life were really changing at this moment, and it was a really scary time. But I remember that I think the blessing in a crisis is that because everything is unstable, you're willing to take risks or do things you may not do otherwise. And so I admitted my feelings to Garrett. I told him that I didn't know what this was, but I'm having feelings. And he equally was kind of unsure about what was going on, but he felt something. And that started the process of probably, I want to say 3 years of us navigating a relationship and seeing if we could even do this, if this felt feasible to us, slowly telling people in our lives as it felt more real, all the way to today where we're married.
Right. So once you kind of own that, because I mean, you had to own all of that. Well, I'm sure it wasn't just an overnight, okay, well, we love each other, let's be in a relationship. I'm sure that took a while to kind of figure out and make sense of. And in the course of that, did that kind of spiral you into this, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't even know what is going on in my life here. Because I mean, if you're going through all of this with a PR firm and you're having to question that path that you took, and then you've got this whole reorientation happening here, like aside from, and not only that, but then you were sick, and I'm sure that was a scary ass situation to go through. Especially if you wake up like spitting blood, I'd be like, what the hell is going on here? I think all of that, that's a lot. That's a lot for someone to have to go through in like a very short period of time, emotionally, mentally. Like, what was happening upstairs? How were you coping with all of that change?
Not, I think it was a lot. I remember writing an email to Garrett because he was away on business and he was not comfortable with people knowing about our relationship yet. And we'd probably been together. And when I say together, I mean loosely, because we weren't exclusive. We were still exploring this. But when we were kind of together for a year at this point, I remember being so frustrated and saying, listen, like I'm going through 10 life changes that for anyone else, this would be the significant change in their life. And I'm going through 10 simultaneously. And the fact that like I'm being secretive about this is really hard and painful to me. I don't know how to deal with all this. So it was challenging. I mean, honestly, it kicked me onto the self-work path because to survive, I needed to go to therapy. I needed to work with healers.
Right.
I needed to go to psychic class regularly. Like it actually kind of propelled me into stepping into intuitive gifts and learning new things about myself as a survival mechanism, quite frankly.
Yeah. So like a lot of people think that whenever there's going to be a profound life change, it's almost like, oh, the universe, like, people, I always make this joke, like people expect an angel to descend from the heavens and to say, hey, here's change, here's the path you should take, and your experience wasn't like that at all. Yours is like literally a brick wall falling on top of you, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And so here you are having to re-examine yourself. And it was because of your illness, I think, that really triggered a lot of that to happen, because a lot of people believe that things are going to be easy, or transitions or changes happen very smoothly. And people sometimes question, why do I have cancer? Why am I going through this? Why am I going through that? And people don't realize there's an underlying spiritual cause or a benefit, because of some of those conditions. Like you wouldn't experience certain things had you not gone through that condition. Do you think that you and Garrett would have even realized how you felt about each other had you not gotten sick, had that not happened?
Probably not. It was a huge catalyst. And, interestingly, at the same time, Garrett was applying for residencies outside of Boston. And so just interesting thing happened, a little intuitive thing. I was in his room one day asking him where he would do his residency, and he thought he was going to Chicago or where else. And he had interviews at 11 out of 12 places he applied. So, I mean, people really liked him. And I remember seeing a piece of paper on the ground, and it said VA Boston, and I just had a flash in my mind of Garrett walking into the VA. Now, his first day of work was July 1st, 2012, and the day I got sick was June 29th, 2012. If he weren't randomly matched in Boston, he wouldn't have been there at that moment. And he had no intention of being there at that moment. And kind of by fate, the first few options didn't choose him, and he got selected by VA Boston. So he
Yeah.
was still in that place.
So, I mean, you strike me as a very intuitive, open, spiritually aligned person. For me, with my partnership, my partner, he's very much of an atheist, very much like I see, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, oh well, coincidences, that's not a big thing. How does Garrett feel about all of those things matching up and lining up the way they did?
Sure. I mean, I think Garrett's certainly not as open and
Mm,
spiritual, I'd say, as I am. But I think that it would be hard to have lived through our experience and not be a little bit spiritual. And so
yeah.
he's certainly, I wouldn't say that Garrett's practicing Reiki all day, every day, but he's definitely really opened up to miracles in a way that he wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes like a mind blowing experience to kind of say, hey, there's more to this than what you think. You might want to open it up a little bit more. So that takes us to the PR changes there because you're going through that as well. And how, you built a life around that path, around that career direction. Did you just decide one day, I'm done, I quit, or and walk out of the building, or seriously, that's what you did? Oh my
No,
God.
I didn't. I
Okay.
wish I did that. So
Okay.
let me
Yeah.
tell you that story. So, we're talking about surrender and being divinely
Mm,
led here. And
mm,
I had the glimmer, the little thought that, like, wouldn't it be cool if I helped other people and coached other people and supported them? And that kind of, I just knew the second that thought came in, it was going to grow like wildfire. And so, I was officially better probably October, November time period. In December, my family always goes to Aruba. Since I was born, we go every single New Year's and sometimes for Christmas. Well, that year, I went to grab my passport and it wasn't in the lockbox I keep it in.
mm.
And so I freaked out. Like, I didn't have my passport. It is now December 24th. I'm leaving for Aruba the next day. On Christmas Day, I don't have my passport. So I drive to my parents' house, which is about 45 minutes or an hour away. I tear apart their house. I'm back in my apartment. I tear it apart. 5 times I went back and forth. I didn't sleep that night. Could
Mm,
not find the passport. My family flies off to Aruba. I'm at home by myself for Christmas Day.
mm,
So at the time, I had planned on taking that week off of vacation and working the next week. Well, I emailed my partners and I said, hey guys, I'm just going to switch the vacation weeks. So instead, I'm going to be here this week and I'm going to meet my parents in Aruba next week. Well, kind of uncharacteristically, they had an issue with this.
mm.
And I said, well, I apologize if I'm not clear, but like I'm going to Aruba.
Right.
This is the important thing for me. And they said, well, it sounds like you're not really committed to the company anymore. And I got on that plane. I said, maybe I'm not.
Right.
And like I just felt furious and full of fire. And it was the first time that I'd ever really chosen myself. Like I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to Aruba. I'm choosing myself. I'm not being a people pleaser here. And so I get home from that trip and there's a little bit of animosity. And I go out to lunch with one of my partners and it was like someone else spoke the words. They came out of my mouth, but I don't even remember saying them. And I said, I'll give you a year's notice. We're restructuring the company. We'll change things around and I'll shift things over. After that year, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I get out of that meeting and I'm like, I don't have a plan. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't have a job. I don't have skills that I have trained for. So I called a health coaching school and their semester had started, but they heard my story. They were compelled. So they got me in.
Mm-hmm.
I signed up for an herbalism program that was going to end around the same time. And I said, somewhere in this year, I will figure out what I'm going to do. And that year was up and I had to figure out what I was going to do.
Mm. So then once the year was up and you gotten a lead in that direction. After that year, you stepped away from the business, and were you just like living off savings? Were you just kind of like muddling through, or?
Yeah, so fortunately, I was an owner, so I could sell my shares, and I did make some money off of that, which could carry me a little bit, but I needed to work, I needed
Yeah.
money. I don't live in a cheap city. So I kind of thought, well, I'm going to do some health coaching and some herbalism.
Mm.
And I started a blog in addition to all this to find my voice. And I was fortunate enough that 3 months into this process, an editor reached out to me and said, I've been following your writing. I'd love to offer you a book deal. And I said, that sounds wonderful, but I don't have an idea for a book. I don't have a proposal. And she said, well, don't worry about it. We're going to brainstorm together. We're going to create a book. And so she said, you have enough blog posts. Let's do that. So I put that together, and I was writing for some publications because of this. People asked me to write about my life. And that's where I decided to write about Garrett. I felt like, okay, this is a story I really want to claim. Now, the truth is, although I may have been writing for national publications and have this great book deal, I still wasn't making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I still didn't really have this big, successful job. And it felt, I felt like a fraud, that people thought I was the celebrity. I had all this money, and I didn't really, I still did not know what I wanted to do. The work I was doing, I didn't love. I felt like a failure. I felt like I am never going to discover my purpose. And at the end of that year, I still didn't have a career that I loved. I still didn't know what I was doing with myself. I had blown through my savings. I was now at the edge where I thought, I have to go back to PR with my tail between my legs and beg my partners to take me back. I have no money. I have nothing else. And I thought, I've got to give it one last hurrah. And so this one last hurrah I was going to do was to create a blogging course, because I thought, this is the one thing, right? I'm trying to follow my purpose here. This is the one thing I've been validated for. People like my writing. I can teach people how to find their voice. I'm going to create a blogging course.
Right.
So I went crazy with it. I mean, I put every last dollar I had. I hired someone to help me with content. I hired a web design team. I had, great cameras and lighting and all this great stuff. I put so much effort into marketing, and crickets. Nobody was signing up for this course. And I thought, that's it. And I mean, for everyone listening, I don't know if this has ever been your experience, but it is the most crippling feeling in the world to feel like I showed up, I answered the universe's call. Like, I have been through hell here. Like, I changed my relationships and job and health, and I really feel like I did it, and the world doesn't want what I have to offer.
Right.
And I was in such a crippled state from this that I knew I was going back to PR. I just knew it. And so I said, I'm going to host a failure celebration. So I got to flip this somehow, right? I got to flip this. I'm going to have a failure celebration here. And my failure celebration was going to be to go into a Facebook group of spiritual entrepreneurs that I had become a part of and offer them all branding sessions. Because at the time, back in PR, I developed a system of branding that was very simple for CEOs to understand. You would kind of combine all of your values and product offerings and positioning and messaging, everything you can imagine, into just 5 or 6 words. And this was very effective for writing press releases. This is very effective for media interviews, for hiring people, building a company culture, all of that. And it was something I was kind of known for. So I thought, well, I'm not successful, but some of these people have got to be successful. Let me help them. I'm going to do this. And I went so crazy with it. I decided I'm going to do 6 sessions back to back to back. I did not have a minute to pee. I had to actually stop sessions to pee that day.
Right.
Because I didn't, I was just like, this is my failure celebration. I'm going out with a bang. But these people weren't the tech entrepreneurs that I was used to.
Right.
These were life coaches and psychics and healers and therapists and all type of amazing people. And they all said to me, every single one of them, Mike, you didn't just tell me my brand. You explained to me my life purpose in a way that nobody ever has before.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what? Like, what are you talking about? I mean, the one thing I couldn't give myself, right? The one thing I've struggled through every life change I've had, trying to understand why I got sick, how I ended up with Garrett, why I've changed my job, why this is working, but that isn't. You're telling me I explained all of that to you. And so for a kind of coach and healer, I did something pretty radical. I actually took my own advice and I tried to do one of these sessions on myself. And I didn't even know if it was possible, but I just thought, what the heck at this point, right? So I started doing the session on myself, and I'll never forget the date. It was January 19th, 2015. I had been working for over a year now. I was about to go back to PR. I had no money left. And I looked at 6 words on a whiteboard, and it explained everything about me. And that started the path of the work that I do now.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. I can so relate to your path because for me, I was a store manager for Starbucks and I'd been with Starbucks for many, many years. And I had established myself with the company and I was just I was done. It wasn't for me, and everything I had tried to do was not working. Going to other companies, trying other management positions, and this is what I really wanted to do, but I was too scared to do it because I'm like, who's going to make a living doing this? How am I going to be able to support myself? How am I going to pay? How am I going to feed my cats? That's what the most important thing in my head was. How am I going to feed my cats?
Right.
So when at that time with Starbucks, we had the option of taking like a year off. It's called a coffee break. So if you're with the company for so long, you can take a year, go do whatever you want to do, and then you can come back and get your job back, no questions asked. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, this is an opportunity to maybe take a year away and not risk my position with the company or my standing with the company. But at the same time, I was like, well, I've got to save up for this because I can't just walk away from Starbucks with no money. I can't assume I'm going to leave and money's just going to start flowing in. So I spent a year building up my savings, and then I took my coffee break, and I'm like, okay, if I spend the year focusing on my business, I either am going to succeed or I'm going to fail. If I succeed, great. I don't have to come back to Starbucks. If I fail, then I just burn through my savings and I had a year's vacation. That's it. So I kind of made peace with it in my head. And so that's what I ended up doing. And it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. And it worked like seamlessly. And except for the fact that before that point, I had had similar experiences to where I was trying different things and I felt like I could not figure out who I was. And I started off with Reiki because my psychic ability, my mediumship ability hadn't really been in play at that moment. I had kind of lost the ability when I was a teenager and I made a bad decision back then. So I'd spent 15 years trying to rebuild and reinitiate my capacity to be psychic and to be a medium, and nothing was working. So I just kind of gave up and said, okay, I'm going to do Reiki because I have nothing else to do. And my friend's doing it. I'll just learn from her and I'll go ahead and start doing it. And so doing that and starting the process actually led to my abilities kicking back into gear and opening up my channeling ability again. And that was where it started to feed into something else, into something else, into something else. So, but when I was approaching it all from the mentality, because I had other business attempts or ventures that I had tried before then. I had tried like a smudging kit business. I had tried other things, a t-shirt business, and nothing was catching. But I was focused on dollar signs. I was focused on supplementing my income so that I could leave Starbucks. And when I just stopped focusing on dollar signs and I focused on the work, then once I began focusing on the work and I didn't have any clients, I just started giving away appointments and doing it for free for other people. And in the process of giving it away, all of a sudden people start coming to me for this or that. So it sounds like the moment you stopped being so concerned about, okay, well, this shit isn't working. I'm going to probably go broke if I continue to do this. I'm going to have to go back to PR. All right, well then fuck it. I'm just going to go ahead and give away whatever it is I'm going to give away. And in the process of you beginning to give away and just doing the work and not focusing on dollar signs or surviving, that's when the flip happened for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what's so interesting about it is it's work that I had been doing my whole life, but I didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that, why I was so successful in public relations was because I was tapping into something deeper for people. I was helping them to really access the essence of who they are and then share that with the world. And it's something that I went a roundabout way to find for myself, but when I did, it just clicked everything into place.
Yeah. So now you've transitioned yourself over, because once you started to do that work, what was that when you started that switch where you were just more focusing on like professionals in this industry and you were kind of coaching in that way? That started off as just like a spiritual coaching type gig?
Yeah, so I had this system of sacred branding now. I just stuck the word sacred in front and I called it sacred branding. And I said, I don't know what this is. And that night, the very night that I went to bed after discovering the sacred branding system and discovering my own brand energies or my own, life purpose, I went to bed and I remember shooting up out of bed at about 4 a.m. and kind of blurry-eyed going over and writing down 5 words. I didn't know why I was writing these words down. I just was. And the words were discover, create, value, express, and heal. And so I looked at these words. I thought, I don't know what this means. I put them away. And I was doing one-on-one sacred branding sessions and helping people kind of, once they discover that purpose or that brand, they're using it for business, to then build it out into a business. And so I was doing kind of coaching like that. And at the same time, I had all these media interviews lined up because my book was still coming out. Like I may have forgotten about it, but my publisher didn't. So I still had all this going on over here. And so I was kind of feeling confused and stuck between two worlds. And I went to bed one night and I had a dream about an artist that I had only spoken to once. I didn't know anything about her, but I had a dream about her. And in the dream, her and I were both doing this work related to the 5 words. And so I reached out to her the next day on Skype and I said, hey, can we have a call? I want to ask you something. And I said, this is going to sound really strange. I don't know you. I know, you're an artist, but I feel like you're a part of whatever I'm creating. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, I feel like I'm already a part of it. And so the two of us, we didn't know each other. We had these 5 words. We had this concept of sacred branding, and we put it together in a program called The Sacred Circle.
Yeah.
And it was something that we started doing. I didn't have content. It didn't even come to me until the day before I taught. Yeah. So I was like on the fly, figuring it out with the first, we fortunately had 20 people join us the first round. And I was figuring it out. And Sherry, my partner, was making them into beautiful slides. And in between calls, making the spread, my ugly rudimentary worksheets into pretty ones so I could give them to people. And somehow we've been running it now continuously for 5 years or 4 years, 4 years now, 4.5. Yeah.
So it sounds, when I listen to you, it sounds like you were very structured and planned before this stage in your life. And then like when you were back in PR, you just like, were you methodical and very meticulous about details and about like different things, planning all your day schedule? Were you more like that when you were back in that mode?
Sure. I mean, I think I had to be given, it's a 24/7 news cycle. I had a lot of clients doing a lot of different things. It was a very regimented, structured life. And I remember when I first left that work, I felt like I was a fish out of water. Like it was really hard to be like, so I do what I want today. And I don't know, I can go for a walk. I mean, I remember when I would go for an hour walk by myself, and I felt like a badass. So I was like, I had permission to go out,
right.
That's how chained to a desk I felt. I didn't realize it until I had to challenge it. But I would feel guilty. That was the big thing. My husband now, Garrett, would come home from work. And if I was ever watching TV, oh my God, I would be mortified because like I should be working. I should be doing, Right. And Garrett would always say, if anyone in the world needs to be watching TV right now, it's you. Like you are absolutely psychotic. You are always, but in my mind, it felt like, I'm worthless. And so this work and this whole path brought up so many self-worth issues for me to look at.
Yeah. I think that's something that I've struggled with the most because coming from a regimented, 15 lattes, got it. Give me two minutes, like going into this mode of I have to do this. I have to do that. I've always got my hand in like so many pots. And now where I have so much free time and I do walk every day, like 1 hour a day, just to kind of zone in and tune into myself and ground myself. And I have a lot more free time than I used to. And for me, sitting on the couch watching TV, typically 80s commercials or something, it at first it was a big struggle because I'm not used to that. I grew up from, a Hispanic family. You work your ass off. You got to get someplace. You always have to be working your ass off for everything you do. So to go from that to, I have like a lot of extra days to do nothing and I can just enjoy life. It took a while and it's still a process for me. Do you still struggle with that?
Sure, I can still catch myself. And especially when this week, I'll be totally upfront and transparent. We've got a lot going on because the end of the year is quickly approaching. And I'm away for a week, actually, at a Tony Robbins retreat with my dad in just 2 weeks now, less than 2 weeks. So my year is basically done, which means that almost every hour of my day is planned. And I will, if I've got that free hour or if I'm really bad, and cancel something to make time for myself, which, it's still, I get caught up in that way of thinking. I think like, I can't do this. And I think, why not? Like, this is my business. It's for me. If I want to cancel this meeting, that's fine. I have permission. And so I think there are just those layers and layers we're constantly working through.
So with the people that you work with online, or with the people that you work with in your program, I've I've taken programs like that before because I was helping myself to get better at certain things I wasn't really naturally good at. And so it allowed me to kind of grow in that way. But whenever I would join a program like that, there was always people in the class or in the course who they wanted all of this. I mean, they literally had this massive vision, but they put zero effort into it. And they had tons of excuses. And it's like they were expecting for someone to do the work for them. How often do you encounter that where people are not really understanding that this is actually going to take real work and effort from them, and it's not going to be just something that you snap your fingers and you suddenly click? Because I know a lot of people who think once they find their passion, that's it, like game's over, life automatically becomes amazing, and like you're going to have opportunities coming at you left and right. What has been your experience with that?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. One is we're really fortunate. I don't know how or why, but we hardly ever attract in wrong fit people. So I don't, often have people who don't get what the work is about. And also, most of our people and how we talk about the work is it's not just about business or work. We have a purpose. I mean, like if it's just about business, do you not have a purpose in your relationship or your friendship or breathing right now? That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So, we're talking about a really holistic view of things. And if you're not ready to make those massive changes in your business, cool. I'll tell you my story. So the one thing I did after January 19th, 2015, I made a massive change, something that changed everything in my life. I bought a pair of underwear. And I tell this story all the time because it was my first pair of expensive Calvin Klein bright orange underwear. And before that, I was wearing like Holy boxers, This was a big shift. But I say that because it was the first thing that made me feel all of my purpose, aligned, zany, free, unmistakable, definitely vulnerable, successful. And when I put these underwear on, it was like I had superhero powers now. I wore these underwear on every speaking engagement I ever did. On my book tour, I wore them the day that I surprised my now husband to go to Italy and propose to him in Italy. I wore them on my wedding day. I mean, these underwear were like my magic underwear. And now, unfortunately, after years of extreme overuse, I have had to throw them out.
Oh, I would have framed them, I would have
I know, right? Shouldn't I have? But I think Garrett probably ripped them and threw them in the trash. But anyway, what was really powerful here is I think that, yes, it can be hard work. Yes, we want to build some massive things, but I'm interested in galvanizing who we are, galvanizing that genius, galvanizing that purpose. And it's always accessible to us, regardless of what circumstance people feel they're in right now, or, what disadvantages they have or whatever, there's something within reach. Yeah. And so we can begin to build that up. And that's something that we're really focused on through our work.
So what is a tip you can give people who are trying to find their purpose? Like, what's one thing that you've encountered over and over that you think has been able to be a facilitator for those who just are like, I have no idea who I am or what I'm supposed to be doing here? Like, what's one thing you would suggest or say that could help people to just unravel or start to uncover their purpose?
Sure. So can I give three?
Oh yeah, perfect. Three is great. Right. Yeah.
I got three good ones here. So we have a lot of bad life purpose advice out there, quite frankly. So if you haven't been able to discover your purpose, I want you to know that you're not wrong, you're not broken, it's not your fault, actually. When we begin to unpack some of this stuff, it becomes really obvious. The first thing I like to say is that purpose isn't achievable. Now, we all pretend it is. We'll say things like, my life purpose is to be a life coach, or to be a psychic, or to be a health coach. And that's wonderful. But if it's achievable, that means A, we can fail it, and B, we didn't have it at a certain point. Right. And that doesn't make any sense. Right. I mean, did you not have a purpose as a baby? Right. So it's less achievable, and I think of purpose more as sensitivities. We've had sensitivities our whole lives. We're all sensitive. We're just not all sensitive in the same way. So you might be sensitive to loud music or spicy food or, classical music. And if you are sensitive to classical music, you can probably hear notes that I can't hear. If you're sensitive to movies, you can probably see things in cinematography that I can't see. Because contrary to popular belief, the word sensitive doesn't mean weak or fragile, or broken. It means able to sense more. And so we're sensing more. We have, I'm going to see things you can't see, hear things you can't hear. Also, I'm going to hold more trauma around that issue, of course, because I'm experiencing it. I'm feeling it deeper. So we're going to see this come across our whole lives. So that's one thing, just thinking about what you're sensitive to, either what you're attracted to in life, what you're really triggered by, that's going to bring up our sensitivities, or what you want to heal in yourself or in the world around you. So if you're really feeling like, I never feel seen or worthy, and I want to heal that in myself, that's telling you about your sensitivities. Yeah. If you think, I'm really sensitive to issues of sex trafficking or drug addiction, that's telling you about your sensitivities. Now, the second thing I'm going to say is purpose isn't just job-oriented. It's not just your job. You do have a purpose outside of job, like we've said before. And so this is something that can be really toxic, where we put so much emphasis on our job that we forget about purpose in our relationships, and the way we dress, and the way we express ourselves, in hanging out with my dogs, like decorating my home. We all have purpose, and there are a million ways to share it. And so we can kind of release some of the shame around that. And the third, and this is the most important one for me, is that life purpose usually, or life purpose advice at least, usually asks us to make a lot of false assumptions. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a story just to give you an example here. Let's say that you are really sick, like I was, and you start healing yourself, and you get better, and you learn about nutrition, and you're all jazzed up about this. And so you start telling all your friends and family, like, oh my gosh, I know this nutrition stuff. Let me help you. Let me support you. And you're telling everybody. And you're so excited, and it feels so good. It feels really purposeful. It feels really passionate. And you think, I've got it. I finally figured it out. I know my life purpose. So what do? Of course, you sign up for health coaching school, and you spend thousands of dollars, and you spend countless hours and years of your life, but it doesn't matter because you know your purpose, and this feels so good. And then you finish that school, and you quit your job, and you start doing your health coaching, and you're not making a lot of money. Right. And worse than that, you start hating it and feeling really resentful. Now, did you not know your purpose? Did you totally screw it up? Are you a mess, or you're broken? If we follow traditional life purpose teaching, yeah, that's what it's telling us. But here's the thing. It's asking you to make a lot of false assumptions. We assumed that because it felt so good with friends and family that meant we wanted to be a health coach. But if we look at it as sensitivities in sacred branding, how I talk about it, let's say that that person in another reality, instead of going through that whole process, learned their brand energies and discover that some of their themes, some of their sensitivities are, spontaneous, curious, experimental, vulnerable, intimate, supported. These were things that they were really interested in. Well, now it's pretty clear why they loved working with friends and family. They could spontaneously support those they're intimate with, be vulnerable themselves, and experiment and get curious about what's going to work. The second we take the spontaneity out by working with random people, the second we start using meal plans, it's not as experimental. The second we're not intimate with these people, it doesn't feel as good. It wasn't that you were wrong in the first place. It's that we were looking at the what, not the why. Yeah. And that's something that we can see why this relationship feels good or doesn't. Why I fell in love with Garrett in the first place. Why, this job didn't work out, but that one did. It starts explaining everything because the word purpose means what. Means why, not what. So if we start thinking about it that way, it's not achievable. It's not just your job. It's related to your sensitivities, and we don't have to make assumptions. Yeah. We can think about the why. So those are some ways that I think about it.
You wish they would teach us this in school at a very young age.
Let me tell you, I'm, for the first time ever, 2 days from now, gonna do my first experiment doing sacred branding with a 6-year-old. Because we've had a lot of teachers ask to license this to go into schools. And I would love to. I wish I had it as a child. And so I don't know if I can do it. I'm really nervous, but it's my niece. So I said, and she is very shy. She's probably the hardest kid I can work with. So I said, if I can do it with you, I can do it with anyone. And that's what I'm going to try, because you're right. I wish if I learned this in school, I would have saved thousands of dollars, thousands of hours, but more importantly, I wouldn't have had the shame that I had about who I was.
Yeah. Are you going to like document everything you're doing with her? Because I mean,
So
that could in itself be a book for parents, like Diary of a Purposeful like 6 year old or whatever. You know.
yeah, well, I want to first at least see if I can even do the process with her
Mm.
because the thing is, we underestimate kids. Kids have
Mm-hmm.
a subjectivity. They know, I talked about those three things: what you're attracted to, what you're triggered by, what you want to heal. Kids know all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can make it like a game and get that out of her, then, me and Sherry are going to be studying the film of it, like a playbook, and we're going to try to see if we can share this with other people. But absolutely, I mean, I would love to watch that process because I know for myself, I've uncovered years and years of shame simply by knowing my why, like
Yeah.
who I truly am.
Yeah, I think in dealing with as many people as I've dealt with over the years, it's the theme has been reoccurring where when people come to me and they ask me what their purpose is, my answer is the same. Like you've begun living your purpose since the moment you were conceived. Like your life is your purpose. You are here to live and see and feel through you. Your purpose is
Exactly.
complete. Like you're already accomplished in that way. So what the hell are you going to do while you're here? Like what can you do that allows you to embrace your most authentic self and express that and to experience that in the actions that you take or in the people that you interact with and exchange with. And so like what you're describing, I mean, you can apply that not just to purpose and like life path. It sounds like you can apply that to like relationships and people because people always think I'm going to go date. Every guy that I dated has been a mistake or it's been a waste of time. I don't want to waste my time. And I'm like, why do you think every single person you date is a waste of your time? What makes you think that you need to find perfection? Why don't you think that this is all a practice opportunity for you to figure out who you are, how you function in a relationship, and then you can transform with every single experience you have so that you can line up with something that's going to work better for you? Because it sounds like what you're describing, you can apply it in different ways to different categories.
Anywhere. I mean, we as humans, we obviously have a purpose in every moment of my life.
Mm,
And I always say that, purpose should be a reliable, predictable formula for success and fulfillment that
yeah.
works in any area of your life without fail.
Yeah.
We know it's not achievable, so we can't fail it. We know it's not just your job, so it's not just in one area, it's in every area of your life. And we know it's going to tell us exactly what makes us feel successful and fulfilled because that's the why.
Yeah.
So that's what it should be. We should be able to constantly look back at it and say, oh, I get that this marketing effort's going to work, but this one isn't.
Right.
I get that, why this relationship I struggled with. It's not that I was wrong. It's not that the other person was wrong. It's just that, okay, I'm going to give you my example here. So I'm always drinking water. I got my mason jar of water here, you can see. And I, theoretically could drink that out of a mug, a cup, glass, plastic, whatever. I just want the water. It's not really about the mason jar.
Right.
So if you gave me that mason jar full of alcohol, I don't drink alcohol, I probably wouldn't be satiated.
Right.
But we treat life like that all the time. We'll say like, oh, I want a relationship. We don't care about what essence it is. And then when we get in there and we realize, hey, I don't feel satisfied here, it's because that relationship wasn't the right one for us. It didn't give us what we really wanted. We always want that essence. And likewise, if you've ever been told that you're too much or not enough, I know I have a lot, too sensitive, too emotional,
Right.
too loud, too passionate, too whatever. The thing about that is, if I ever had a gallon of water and I tried to pour it into my little mason jar and it spilled all over the floor, I wouldn't shame the water for being too much. I would get a bigger container. So this is something that we need to understand. If it's not that that person's wrong or we're wrong, it just might not be the right container for us.
Right.
When we know our essence, when we're tuned into that essence, our job is just go find the right containers for that essence.
Yeah.
If we're too much or not enough, when someone says to me, Mike, you're too much, nowadays I thank them. I say, great, you're telling me this is the wrong container.
Right.
You can't handle me. Let me go
Right.
off and find the right container.
Right.
There's so much shame in the way we talk about these things, and we can really flip it and realize I don't need to fit into your little box because I'm not wrong. I'm right, and I'm going to go build a life around me being right.
So let me tell you something that you did that inspired me. One little thing that you did that kind of really helped to inspire and to shift my energy. So coming from Houston, I had a really good friend who, her name was Sandra Logan. She's a well-known psychic in that area. She does a lot of radio work, and she's very professional. She's very careful about the way she speaks and the way that she expresses herself. And when we met each other, she was always telling me that, you don't talk about yourself, don't expose yourself to people, you have to keep yourself private, you can't be sharing as much, you can't curse, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's this like sense of professionalism. Now granted, she comes from a very different mindset, she came in this industry from a very different perspective, and everything that you did in this industry had to be professional. And so for me, I really struggled with that because by nature, I'm a very loose cannon, a controlled loose cannon, but nonetheless, like I'm still going to point in a direction to shoot at, but I'm going to still shoot here and there. So you used to post these videos where you would have like a Friday dance day where you would just like play something and you'd be dancing like a maniac. And the first time I saw those videos, I thought to myself like, well, that's not very professional. And like, here he is promoting this or that, or talking on this and that and speaking about it. But at the same time, he's doing something that doesn't come across as very professional or very lined with the box of what success or what you being able to, see people, and it didn't fit with that. And so for me, it was like, well, that's just odd, but it sat with me. And I saw you do it several times and I thought to myself, okay. So it kind of gave me permission to like explore myself a little more and allow myself to reveal myself in a more authentic way, just by you being silly and goofy. Now, you may have thought I'm just dancing like a fool and I'm just kind of like giving people a chance to like enjoy Friday. For me, it had a little switch in my head where I'm like, interesting, that's interesting. And so I took it and then I just ran with it, and then it almost added on to other things that were happening around the same time. So I want to say this, I really appreciate you for who you are and for how you have shown yourself to the world, because just by doing that in itself, you've had a massive impact on a lot of people. And for me, you have had an impact on my life as well. And I just want to thank you for that. So thank you for your crazy, silly dances, because they meant a lot to me and they helped me to reveal myself even further.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That is deeply honoring. So I'm really taking that to heart. And, I think that when we tune into our uniqueness, whether we call it a life purpose, a genius, a sensitivity, however we want to talk about it, when we really embody that, we inherently give other people permission to be who they are and step into it. And I think this is why I do the work I do every day. Like, I want to live in a world where everybody has permission to be themselves. And it's not always pretty. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's too much. And that's great. Like that, if it's too much, that means we need to build bigger boxes and bigger containers. Because the ones we have right now are not fitting everybody. And I think that's really, really important and something I'm passionate about. So I really thank you for that. And I think I have no doubt that you have been that person for so many people, and we all have that ability. And I'm just really grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, it's the cookie cutter problem. I think we went through such a long period where everything was cookie cutter, like everybody's, little cubicle was exactly the same. And now people are like, that's not me anymore. And that's never been me. And I think, what the work that you're doing is helping people to understand that they can be successful, or they can achieve things without having to go by the mold that we've been trained and conditioned for in our lives. So for people who are interested in like the Sacred Branding e-course, they go to your site and they're going to immediately see that that's the option available and that's something that you're offering. What does that look like for them, and what are they going to be asked? What is going to be asked of them, so that people go in understanding what this is going to be for them, for those who are interested in taking the course?
Yeah, sure. So, Sacred Branding, like I mentioned before, was a system, a proprietary methodology that we developed over, years of working with people. And it was something that we offered for $1,000 because it took a lot of energy out of me. I mean, it was a really intensive process. And I thought, well, wait a minute. My commitment, now that I discovered my own purpose, my commitment is to share this with as many people as possible, as far and wide, all the time. So can we make this sustainable? And it was a scary question for me. But can we turn this into an e-course? And we were able to half the price and make it $500 and do that for a bit. And I tested this for years to make sure that we have a guaranteed, we had a 100% success rate. Every person went through it could discover their purpose. I could not allow, if we turned it into an e-course, to lose that. Like I wanted, if someone does that, I got to make an e-course. So we, in the e-course, did that. And recently, we've been able to actually drop the price down even lower to be able to help more people. So it's only 3 payments of $66 now, which is really shockingly accessible and important, because we want to get this out. So if people want to join that, what happens is you go in and it just feels like you're hanging out having a conversation with me. It's really designed to be interactive. We never ask you to do a worksheet separate from me. So you download that worksheet, I talk to you, hang out, guide you through it. I've done this for a number of years, so I know every pitfall or challenge you might run into. And I say like, hey, if you're feeling concerned about this, here's what you do. Then for each step, there are about 5 steps in all. We have each step, you got your training video, and then you've got a demo of me working with a client one-on-one to be able to guide you through that step, show you how it's happening in life, real things that might come up as you're doing it. Of course, we've got a bunch of energetics at the beginning and end to help support you through it. But it's a really fun process. And it's something that, by the end of it, if you go through everything and you cannot discover your purpose for whatever reason, which has never happened before, and you want to send us all the work that you've done, we're happy to send you a refund because we don't believe that's possible. It's a proven system that just kind of works for people. So that's a basic overview of how we work every day.
Yeah. I tell people, if you really want to get if you really want to pour your energy and heart into something, you have to invest, you have to spend some money to make some money. And I see it as an investment, not as an expense. And people have that struggle. Yeah.
What I think about with the e-course, I mean, even, how often, go back to that story I told about, a person who healed themselves and started helping friends and family and then went to health coaching school. I was that person, right? I have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, countless hours, so much shame not knowing my purpose. Would I have paid $1,000 for someone to give me a predictable formula? Yes, I would have paid that 10 times over. Would I have paid $500? Of course I would. So $66, we try to keep it as accessible as possible because, we're blessed in our work to have a very diverse population of people we work with. People at all income levels, all walks of life, all everything. And that's important for us. I mean, I don't want, certainly we have higher level offerings, but for something like this, everyone deserves to know their purpose. And we want to commit to keep it as accessibly priced as possible.
So if you could go back to yourself 7, 8, 10 years ago and knowing what you know now, having had all this experience, what would you tell yourself that might have made that experience a bit easier or more effective so that it may have not taken as many hurdles to get through? What would you have told yourself?
Honestly, it probably would have been those 6 sensitivities, the brand energies, and told myself like, hey, you're okay. This is why this isn't working out. This is why you're struggling over here. This is why you don't feel good enough here or why you think you're too much over here. Like, you're okay. You have been a genius. You have had a purpose the whole time. All you've got to do is start living from that place. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to, tone yourself down and dilute yourself. You just got to be who you are. Yeah. And so I learned my brand energies 5 years ago, and God, I wish I learned them 20 years ago.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate the time you spent with me. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Is there anything you would like to say to anyone who's listening before we end?
Yeah, one of my favorite things to end with is just, you never have to try to be yourself. If you're trying, it means you're being somebody else. So, yes, you can put in hard work. Yes, you can put focus, but every aspect of your life should just feel like you. And that's entirely possible. And you are a unique genius. You're a person who nobody else in the world has ever been. We don't have that wisdom from anyone else. So if we don't get from you, we're going to lose it forever.
Thanks so much for energetically tuning in. If you'd like to try the Sacred Branding e-course or want to know more about Mike and the work that he does, then check out his website at www.mikeiamele.com. That's MikeIamele.com. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then like, share, and review my show on your podcast listening platform. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and check out my website at www.fernandomarone.com for additional content, updates, articles, and more. Until next time, kiddos, and be sure to have yourselves a namaste.